Hi guys, welcome to the examples video for lesson 6.2 on recursive formulas. So in this video we'll do 4 more examples of using formulas to generate sequences or starting with a sequence and writing a formula from it. Okay, so first example, we're starting with the formula and we want to come up with the sequence. So again, we can look at our formula and see that this is our first term. It's just given right to us. So I know that the first term in the sequence is 1. Okay, now let's look at our rule. What does the rule say? The rule says that the next term is -3 times the now term. So this is basically saying to get the next, multiply by -3. Okay, so to get the next term over here, I need to multiply by -3. So 1 times -3 is -3. Okay, so that's the second term. Then I use my rule again to get the next term. I multiply by -3 again. So -3 times -3 becomes +9. Okay, to get the next term, we multiply by -3 again. So 9 times -3 is -27, and so on. So there we started with our formula and we used it to generate the sequence. And our steps were writing down the first term from our formula. Then we basically interpreted our rule. We said in our own words what that rule meant. And then we applied the rule over and over again to get each next term. Okay, now let's look at one where we start with the sequence and we use it to come up with a formula. Okay, so we know that we're always going to start with our first term, right? So my formulas always start by saying what the start is equal to. The start, or the first term, equals 18. Okay, now I want to know what is a rule for the next term. So I want to know, how do I go from -18 to -8, -8 to 2, 2 to 12, 12 to 22? What am I doing each time? So we might see it actually over here quicker. Like 2 to 12, we're adding 10. 12 to 22, we're adding 10. -8 to 2, we're also adding 10. -18 to -8, we're adding 10. So every time we're adding 10. To get the next term, we take the current term and we add 10. So next term is the now term plus 10. And that's all it is. So these formulas correspond really nicely to how we say it out loud. So I say the next term is the now term or the current term plus 10. I literally write now plus 10. And that's why they're kind of useful as a learning tool. Okay, so let's go on and try 2 more. Here we have a formula and we want to write the sequence. So the sequence is telling us where we start. This is our first term. So we know that the sequence starts at 2. And now let's look at our rule. So the rule says next equals now squared. So this is a little different, but we're going to work the same way. We're going to try to interpret this rule. This is telling us how to get the next term from the current term. So if you're at the current term, you get the next term. So get the next term. We want to square the current term. Okay, so let's look at that. I want to do 2 squared to get my next term. Because my current term is 2, I square it to get the next. So 2 squared is 4. Then to get the next term, I'm going to take my new current term, which is 4, and square it. 4 squared is 16. Okay, to get the next term, I square it again. So to get the next term, I do 16 squared, which is 256. And we could keep going, squaring, 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 to get the rest of the sequence. Okay, so again, we identified our start, we interpreted the rule, and then we applied the rule. Okay, last one. We have a sequence, we want to write a rule. So let's look at our sequence. We see that our first term is 96. So we know that in our rule, we can say that the start is 96. The second part is we need our rule for the next term. So I want to know, how do I find the next term when I know the current term? So how do I go from 96 to 48, from 48 to 24, 24 to 12, 12 to 6? So we might notice it over in this group, divide by 2, divide by 2, and that works over here as well. 48 divided by 2 is 24, 96 divided by 2 is 48. So we could think of this as divide by 2. We could also think of it as multiplying by a fraction. So we could also think of this as times 1/2. And both ways of thinking about it are fine. So let's look at, if we think about it as divide by 2, let's write that as our rule. So to get the next term, we take the now term and we divide it by 2. So we can write that like this. We take the now term and we divide it by 2. Okay, that's totally fine. That totally works. If we want to think of it as a multiplication, you could write it this way. You could say, to get the next term, you take the now term and you multiply it by 1/2. These are the same, so either is fine. All right, hopefully that helped you practice working with now next formulas and sequences. Please fill out the check for understanding, and then you are done for the day.